Hey VC, Tony here. Tony's LPs are us, as you can see from the sign behind us. Just going to do a video today about a record that I didn't know was so good. I've had the record maybe 30, 40 years, I'm not sure. Came out in 1984. That's this record here. Barry Manilow, 2 a.m., Paradise Cafe. Still in a shrink. It's his jazz album. Here's the inner. You can see that. Now, I'm not a Barry Manilow fan. I have his records. And the reason I pulled this out is it was just a random pull from behind me. I went through the M's, pulled out this one, and a Barry Mann album that I did a short on. And Barry Mann wrote a bunch of things, doo-wop type of things, 1960s, like Who Put the Bop in the Bop, that type of. So this was next to it with some Barry Manilows that I have. And I said, this looks interesting. You know, basically, it looked interesting because Gerry Mulligan is on it, Sarah Vaughan, Mel Torme. So when I saw that, I said, okay, I'm going to clean this record and play it. And I was really pleasantly surprised. Like I said, I'm not a Barry Manilow fan. I appreciate his art. You know, the guy sold, 60, 70 million records. It's been around since the 70s. Started out with Bette Midler, produced a couple of her albums, the Divine Miss M and Bette Midler. I think they were 73, 74-ish. So this came out 11 years later. But at that point, he was a mega superstar. But he wanted to put out a jazz record. Now, this is a jazz record of saloon songs, bar songs, torch songs. It's really a concept album. But when I started to look it up for some research, there's literally nothing written about it. Wikipedia has nothing. There's nothing about it on the record except for the inner sleeve. Barry Manilow talks about it in an interview I researched in Rolling Stone, where he was going to do a Paradise Cafe Volume 2. I'm not sure if that ever happened. I don't think so. He said the record was well received. He loved it. He got to work with Mel Torme and Sarah Vaughan on this record, in addition to Gerry Mulligan, who plays an unbelievable sax. I'm just going to go over some of the people on this. James Mundell Lowe, who played with Miles Davis. These are all jazz musicians. Some of them you may know if you're a jazz buff. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know. Played with Davis, Tony Bennett, Peggy Lee, Cher. But James Mundell plays guitar in this, and it's a guitar, Wes Montgomery style, George Benson style. It's just Les Paul. It's just that 40s, 50s smoky cafe vibe guitar throughout the whole record, and blending in with the bass, the double bass that I'll explain who plays bass. Just a really wonderful listen. But Mr. Lowe also wrote music for the Wild Wild West, which is TV's version of James Bond in the Wild West, if you know that. Hawaii Five-0, Starchy and Hutch. George Duvivis plays the double bass on this record, and that is amazing because the bass is right behind the piano, which is, of course, Barry Manilow, and it's mind-boggling how good this record is for a jazz record, from a pop guy to do a jazz record. The thing went gold. It sold over 500,000 copies. I'm not sure what it is at this point. But George Duvivis played with Armstrong, Basie, Sinatra, Coleman Hawkins. He died in 1985 at 64, so he died soon after this record was recorded. On keys, Fender Rose, is Bill Mays, who's been a session jazz guy. Indicated in Wikipedia he's been on 1,000 albums and 36 of his own under his own title, Bill Mays. Gerry Mulligan, of course, the baritone sax player on this, is just out of this world. And if you saw videos of it, there's videos on this with some promos I'll talk about. Gerry is completely white. He's got a white beard. He could be Santa Claus, but when he picks up that baritone sax, just magical. So he started out with Gene Krupa, played with Miles Davis on the Birth of the Cool album, which was around 49-50, and that is a landmark historical record, Birth of the Cool jazz record. Chet Baker, Mel Torme, Quincy Jones. Shelly Manne plays drums on this, and it's a really nice, light, smoky room, brushes type of drum. And he died right after this record in '84 of a heart attack. So he didn't even live to see this record probably be the hit that it was. But he also did soundtrack work. He did soundtrack work, percussion and drums on The Wild One, 53, The Man with the Golden Arm, Sinatra. And if you've ever seen that movie, a lot of the movements that Sinatra's going through with the premise of that film is accented by drums. And that is Shelly Manne. It's Manne. Shelly Manne is a big, big drummer. Also did a lot with Mancini. I just learned that he's on the soundtrack of Atari, which is 1962. Now that is one of the best sounding records of all time. That is a living stereo record. If you ever see that copy in the thrift shops and the cutout bins, pick it up if it's clean. He also worked on Mancini with the soundtrack to the TV show Peter Gunn. Guest artists on this were Mel Torme and Sarah Vaughan. Now they both do a duet with our star here, and it's a duet live, and that's where I'm coming to next. The fascinating part of this record. So they do it live. It's not that phone-in BS where someone's on the other end of the world and they hook up. Those sound good with today's technology, but there's nothing like looking into your eyes when you're doing a duet with a person that two people that I know Barry Manilow looked up to, and for them to work with Barry Manilow, that says a lot as to where he was at that time. And on the back, you could see some photos with Mel Torme, Sarah Vaughan, and a session work. Now, the interesting part of this record, the fascinating part of this record, it's so good, it's digitally recorded. I'm not really sure who the engineer is, I had it somewhere. But it's digitally recorded. Back in the 80s, this was the digital time. We have Dire Straits records were originally where they were digital, and they sound great. This record sounds great. It has a really nice, vibrant separation. It's really well done. Manilow did all the arrangements. He even got some unused Johnny Mercer records, Johnny Mercer lyrics that he got from Johnny Mercer's wife. I think it's Johnny Mercer. Let me just check. I can't see it now, but yeah, Johnny Mercer, When October Goes, was an unreleased track that Johnny Mercer was working on. I think it had lyrics but no music. So Johnny Mercer's wife was gracious enough to give these to Manilow. But on this particular record, he just did that one song. So he's credited with the famous Johnny Mercer. Everything else is penned by Barry Manilow. Now, what's fascinating about this record is it was rehearsed for 3 days, and then it was recorded in one session, one take live. The record is 50 minutes long. It's 49:12. It sounds really good for all that material to be on one side each. It's an Arista, 1984. Interesting enough, this is a Canadian Record Club edition. So I'll have to get a regular edition to compare that to. But those Record Club editions were sometimes using the same lacquers, and they would just do a jacket or stamp a jacket. So this is a CRC. But this record's amazing. Like I said, I pulled it out as a random pull. Thought it looked cool. I love the Sinatras of this type of music in the wee small hours. Point of No Return with Sinatras, and with a combo, small setting, all acoustic. This has the electric guitar, but it's a jazz electric guitar. And once again, Gerry Mulligan is unbelievable. Now, as far as the vocals, the guest vocals, the Sarah Vaughan vocal is on YouTube. So is the Mel Torme. And he blends in so well with Mel Torme. He has that pitch where it's almost, it sounds similar to a Tony Bennett. That even tone, jazz tone. It's just packed with so much good stuff. This record's packed with so much good stuff. It's a concept record. It's about a nightclub guy who's looking for that person who left his life. And I believe at the end, I think there's a happy resolution somehow. But again, recorded and rehearsed in 3 days, recorded in one take, live with no overdubs at Westlake Studio C in LA. Just imagine a record that is so good, flawless, just flawless. He was such a consummate professional. You could hear it. In my research, there's also a documentary on this record that was done by Showtime back in the 80s, 84, 85. I couldn't find it, but I did find clips on YouTube. So there's clips with him singing with Mel Torme, Sarah Vaughan. And there's also this was the age of MTV, videos were coming out. So I'm not sure if this is associated with the Showtime documentary, but there's a bunch of videos on YouTube with Barry doing these songs with different jazz artists. Gerry Mulligan's on it, but for bass he has the great Stanley Clarke. He also has, I think, Phyllis Hyman, I believe it is. There's, like I said, Stanley Clarke is so young, he's so good, he's playing a big double bass, and there's a lot of close-ups. It's a King Creole and the Coconuts are in it. And it's a very plastic-looking set. The set is, if you remember when Elvis did the comeback, it had some of that type of set, which was almost like a staged, a theatrical event. It wasn't meant to be real. It was meant to be a fantasy. But there were people in the audience, and they performed a lot of these songs in that little 25-minute performance. But what's really amazing is that he does the song with, what's her name? McCrae. Forget her first name now, it'll come to me. But he does a song with McCrae, the great female jazz vocalist. And I'll put it in the my notes when it comes to me. But it's just a great record. And to think it's all in one take, 2 a.m., Paradise Cafe, went gold, went silver in the UK. Don't know what silver means. I think 250,000 copies, 500,000 copies in the US. But if you're going to get one Barry Manilow record, if you're not a Barry Manilow fan, try this record. Go for it. George Duvivier on bass, Mundell Lowe on guitar, Barry Manilow obviously keys, vocal, Shelly Manne drums, Bill Mays piano and Rhodes, Gerry Mulligan baritone sax, and the duet Blue with Sarah Vaughan, and Big City Blues with Mel Torme. So there you have it. Like I said, if you have one record that you're going to pick up of a Barry Manilow, you'll probably see this in stores for a couple bucks. I don't really know. Like I said, I don't know where I got this. I'm not a Barry Manilow fan. But there's another record. If you have one record, if you're not a big Jerry Mathis fan, you pick up this record. He's in the room. This is all analog, all tubes. It's just a 6i Columbia. But Johnny Mathis, one open fire, two guitars. This reminds me of this record because it has that cafe, old bar, club, New York City, Chicago, LA. It has that vibe to it. Here we have Dream with Dean, which is the same one. Here's a mono, a tricolor. Very simple. 3 or 4 folks on this playing acoustic guitars with Dean. Dean is sitting right in front of you on his chair with the mic, similar to this Johnny Mathis there in the room. Now, this is recorded well, but it isn't analog, it's digital. So you may have some gripes about that. But like I said, it's recorded well digitally. Whatever they used back then in '84, it's just really, really good. So just want to show you the inner. Right there. Has the lyrics so you could sing along. Yeah, special thanks, album coordinator. Logo design was Sue Riley. Second assistant engineer, Greg Laney. And doesn't have original engineer, first engineer, so I'm missing that. But here's the record. It's on Arista. 1984. Now this is a record, this is a concept record with these artists that if someone like a Frank Sinatra or a Tony Bennett, it would have been one of the biggest jazz records of that decade. It's just that good. Now in 1984, Sinatra did his, I think it may have been his last record, LA Is My Lady with Quincy Jones, which is a great record, but the material on it isn't as good as this. As far as I remember, I'm sure if you remember the tune "LA Is My Lady" or "LA Is My Woman," but Quincy Jones arranged that. Quincy Jones conducted the orchestra in that. So the pedigree is there both ways. But this Gerry Mulligan, and 2 artists on here, their last performances basically, two jazz giants of the session. Their last records. So, like I said, Barry Manilow wanted to do this record. It was like a love thing for him. He wanted to do it. He got the best people that he could. There's videos on YouTube with the duets with VAUGHN and Mel Torme. I'm going to try to link those for this. So pick this up. This is a great album. Very inexpensive, I'm sure. I don't think, you probably don't even know about it. I looked on YouTube. There really isn't anything talking about this record. The clips are on YouTube, so I watched some of the clips. But I listened to the record twice in a row. It's 50 minutes, 49:12. Sounds really good. This is a really near-mint copy. But like I said, if you need one Barry Manilow record, if you're not a Barry Manilow guy, pick this one up. Thanks a lot. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And please, in the comments, fill me in if you know this record. I think this is a pretty famous record. Maybe I missed it. Just a random pull one day. Went right over here, pulled it out. And that's what I call a random pull. Thanks a lot. Keep rocking. Stay safe. Hope you get to enjoy this.